channel for film reviews, discussions, and everything in between. And welcome to episode 3 of our Star Wars month. I'm Chris Garner, joined by my co-hosts Tate and the Hour and George Aldridge as we review and discuss everything involving our favourite galaxy far, far away. We're about a week away now from the release of The Force Awakens as of this recording, and we're celebrating the release of a brand new Star Wars film by devoting the entire month of December exclusively to the Star Wars saga. This is our third episode, so we'll be rounding off our prequel reviews with Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, directed and written by George Lucas, and was released in 2005. I've said this at the start of the other two ones, but I'll just sort of reiterate that the prequels have been reviewed to death on the internet by many other film reviewers. So we sort of have a different approach to it. It's very conversational. We sort of reflect back, make it a much more personal discussion about our own memories of the films when they came out, and obviously we go into the film a little in depth as well. So I think that reviews for this one were pretty unanimous in that this is often everyone's favourite one of the prequels, and it is the case for me with that. There's just a lot more going on in this one. This is the one that sort of everything hinged on. I remember when trailers were coming out for it, it was all huge. Darth Vader was all in the trailers. This was going to be the first time we see Anakin truly, be seduced by the dark side and become Darth Vader. So it was a bridging movie and everything hinged on it.
Yeah, I think with this, talking off the trailer, I was saying a minute ago to you guys before we started recording that I can remember seeing the first ever trailer for this. It seems like yesterday I was in the studio. I was only, it would have been out in '04, I'm guessing, a trailer for the '05 release. It would have been 8 years old. And I just remember the talk of Obi-Wan, then it just cuts to Anakin looking at the camera with the yellow eye. And as an 8-year-old kid, that's without a doubt one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And suddenly I wanted to become Hayden Christensen, which is hilarious at my age now. But going into this one, I remember it a lot more. I said I can't really remember episode 2. Episode 1 I remember little bits of because I was so young. But I can remember everything with episode 3. And it was the merchandise, the hype, seeing it for the first time at cinema with people dressed up. It was quality, but it's definitely the best of the prequel trilogy.
I have to say that, all I can remember from the trailers and before I'd even seen the film was the whole image of Darth Vader breathing for the first time. And that stuck with me. That is probably the clearest thing I can remember from this film, and it's probably the most important thing from this film, as it does lead into Episode 4. I know they had the TV series, or they've got the new TV series Rebels to kind of bridge the gap between. How long is it between?
19, I think.
19
years.
So they got 90. They're on series 2, right? So they're gonna have 19 series of that, just so they can bridge it up. And I just remember that initially. I mean, I'd seen it a couple of times after that, but that was really the one thing that stuck out for me.
And going back to that Clone Wars series that came out, this is the 2D one we're referring to. Since then, we've had the new CGI one, which is still great. I'm still working my way through it. I was hoping to get it all watched before Force Awakens, and I still might be able to. But the 2D one I actually saw after this film came out, but that was quite a cool experience because that's like a 2-volume series on DVD, and the very end leads directly into this one. And I think for quite a few years, it was until Disney sort of took the EU and just said, yeah, this didn't happen, that was regarded as canon. And I always thought that was cool because the meat of the story, really, we never see. We said this in Attack of the Clones, where we never see Anakin's training, and then there's a 3-year time gap between episode 2 and 3 where the bulk of the Clone Wars happened, and again we don't get to see it. We sort of get to see the setup of it and then the aftermath, never anything in between. So I think that was another bad thing of this movie. But one thing I want to say about it is, after seeing the trailers, I was hyped. I knew that we were going to see Darth Vader, although I thought he would appear a lot more in the film. I thought maybe he'd turn into Darth Vader about halfway through it, and the rest of the film would be the whole thing dealing with Vader and seeing him in full costume a bit more. But just seeing this Star Wars, I think I saw this twice in the cinema when it came out, and I remember it was packed. Everyone was into it, and you had the older fans there, you had the newer fans there. But we need to talk about that. This was the first Star Wars film that's been a 12A, because this one is a lot darker and a lot more violent than all the other Star Wars films we've got.
Oh no, this is the cheeriest one. I mean, you have that. You have the whole scene at the start. I mean, not to spoil anything here on a film that came out 10 years ago, but Padme's pregnant, and he's like, "Oh wow, I'm gonna be a dad." and then it's all about protecting, and it's a loving film of friendship between a man and a politician, and it's such a happy film.
Well, talking about the 12A, of course there is a guy that gets turned into a nugget and set on fire at the end and turns into like Frankenstein's monster.
Yep.
And then what really sold it as a 12, I'm guessing, was Master Skywalker. The scene that I used to repeat on demand at the age of 8 or 9. I would always walk around school. I used to say in my auntie's house, Master Skywalker, there are 2 minutes, and what are we going to do? That kid was a hero, because it was someone my age in Star Wars. Yet, he probably got turned into like minced beef by Anakin. It doesn't matter, because that kid tried to save him.
No, he didn't. He basically he is like the kid who everyone now hates. Like, I swear, after that scene when the camera cut away, everyone just turned and looked at him and said, "Why did you go and do that?" And he's like, "Was it something I said?" And in those last moments, they probably don't really care about Anakin too much. They just hate that kid.
Well,
I'd say.
but
Oh, go on.
I'll
Go
just say maybe he got Tusken Raider level beheaded there, you know, when he just swipes at the door.
on. Oh, that would have been epic.
But it's like, has anyone ever seen the Robot Chicken
I was just
version
about
of
to
the
bring that
kids?
up. Yeah.
When
Yeah.
like he's slicing them, he's scared and he thinks it's flowers on Naboo, so he's like slicing all these flowers that turn into the kids. Then he brings them all home for Padme. Says, "I've got some flowers from Naboo for you," and then she just screams, and it's one of the greatest like 3-4 minute jokes I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to bring up actually. But Tate, I know you're not a big fan of Robot Chicken, are you? I
No,
think
I'm
we
not.
talked about it before. Yeah.
Oh, you're not?
No.
I think those Star Wars ones are brilliant, and the stuff they do with the prequels and the original trilogy as well. But so I guess the plot of this one really is what we wanted to see. This is the fall of Anakin Skywalker. This is where we see the friendship between Obi-Wan and Anakin sort of just break down as their big confrontation at the end. And we spoke about this in the Attack of the Clones one, where we said that we were sort of predicting everything that was going to happen because we knew what was going to happen in the next film, A New Hope. So we knew which characters were going to carry over, which ones were absent. So I was sort of watching it at the time thinking, well, I know, sadly, none of the Separatists are going to make it through. I know I'm going to have to say a fond farewell to Newt Gunray, Poggle the Lesser, and all of them in there. I knew that Mace Windu wasn't going to make it, for example. So I think that was one of the faults, unavoidable faults really, of doing the prequels, is that you sort of know where it's going, or knowing which characters you can grow attached to. I don't know if that's a sort of a massive drawback of the film, but I did find this one quite predictable, even at the young age. I think I was probably about, 12 going on 13, I think, when this film came out.
See, mine's different, and although I was only 8/9, or what is it, May, I would have been technically 8 when this came out. I remember not clocking on that things were going to happen. I just kind of went in knowing he's going to turn into Darth Vader. I didn't know anything else. Obviously, I kind of knew about Palpatine would eventually rise, which we can talk about later. But it was when this stuff happened, I never thought Mace Windu would get killed off that early, which was a great killing. The more I think about it, it was a great battle as well, I thought. And then the Separatists, I didn't really think of at all. I just knew that Count Dooku was going to go as well. Again, didn't think it'd be that early, so it handled itself well. But I think when I was at the cinema at that age, you're almost oblivious. You just know the basic outline of who's going to happen and what. Like, I didn't know Chewbacca was going to be in it until I saw it. I just remember seeing Wookiees on the trailer. So there's some really cool bits, but it wasn't as predictable as it would be if it was today.
I have to say that, same with you. I wasn't expecting, Chewbacca or any of the Wookiees to be in it. I wasn't really expecting it to move anywhere onto any other planets. I thought it was literally just going to be kind of another very kind of grounded, we're only going to one place, maybe we'll go off to another planet very shortly and then come back. I thought it was just all going to happen in the Senate, and initially I thought he was going to just completely lose it in one moment, instead of it slowly take over throughout the entire film through the idea of Padme dying. I thought he was just going to completely flip out, because we all knew that Padme's character was going to die as well, because she wasn't in the later films, and it's said that she died in childbirth. And I do have issues with this film, especially concerning her death, but I just thought it was going to be a very grounded film, all in one place, all focusing on just the character of Anakin, but they really did branch out the story quite nicely.
See, I didn't know that Padme was going to die. I sort of guessed it towards the end, especially when he started seeing visions that she'd die in childbirth. But one of the problems with this film, it's clearly George Lucas didn't go back and rewatch his old films, because in Return of the Jedi there's that whole scene with Leia saying that her real mother died when she was very young and she only remembers sort of visions of her, that she was very sad. So I guess that she has these visions by some kind of force impulse as soon as literally
Yeah.
seconds after she was born. So
Well,
when
she
she
was
says
crying.
yeah, oh, I guess so. When she says like she died when I was very young, I didn't realise she meant that young. I think that was just sort of a fault of these prequels, and again, not sort
Yeah.
of watching the older films.
Do
and
your
laying the story out properly.
research on your own
Exactly.
films.
Exactly. But I guess we could start talking about the characters now. I want to get onto favourite scenes later, because I'm thinking now there's quite a lot I want to talk about for that. So you've got Anakin in this one, and obviously they've had 3 years past the Clone Wars, and because we need Anakin to be more darker and more brooding in this film, he has to have long hair and have a big scar across his eye and look evil even when he's a Jedi.
Yeah.
I wanted that haircut when I was that age. I'm sorry, I've got to say it.
Yeah,
I
so
went-
did
I
to be
went-
fair.
I went into the hairdressers with an Anakin Skywalker toy, as well as Obi-Wan. It's off the Mustafar place, so it's still in my garage somewhere. And I just remember saying, I want this hair. And the guy's like, well, you can't, because obviously you've got short hair. Obviously that's just the kid that's obsessed with it. But I always liked it. I thought it was a lot cooler, and going back to yesterday, I kind of said, I don't get why Obi wanted the long hair. It would have suited Anakin in episode 2, Obi-Wan's great in this. He's going into it later. Obi-Wan is Alec Guinness in this, essentially. He's masterly took the role on as Obi-Wan, and this is, I think, why people want to see more of him.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd be up for seeing a spin-off, definitely, because I think there's a lot you could tell in that story. I mean, as far as we're concerned at the minute, sort of Obi-Wan just built that house for himself, or found it, and just stayed in the desert for 20 years or whatever, and just aged massively between turning from Ewan McGregor into Alec Guinness. But that's a story I would like to see. And with Anakin in this film, most of the faults are still there. I think this is the better one of the two of Hayden Christensen, but there's still a lot of problems in that. You still have the awful dialogue, which everything just hinges on George Lucas with this, the direction as well. But you still get all that love stuff, not quite as much as Attack of the Clones, but it's still present, and that's still pretty much the focus for Anakin's downfall in the film, which I'm not entirely happy about, but that's mostly down to, I think, that his change into Darth Vader comes very quick.
Yeah.
Mostly sort of assuming the mantle of Darth Vader. I mean, there's even that scene where it's like Palpatine just pulls that name just completely out of his ass, like he's got a book of like list of Darth names, and he's just sort of running his finger down, just going, henceforth, Darth Vader.
No,
that one.
I reckon he was thinking Darth Lightsaber. No, can't go for saber. Think of a letter that isn't used. V. V isn't used. Vaser? No, Vader. We'll go with Vader.
Yeah.
It's a great... At the age of 8, though, learning the henceforth as a connective was absolutely brilliant. I felt like Stephen Hawkins compared to everyone in my year at primary school. No one had heard of henceforth until I saw Star Wars 3, and then it was a connective on everything.
So
But,
all of your assignments when you were a kid, henceforth.
Yes. The thing is, as an 8-year-old, it's the most intellectual thing. Like, imagine like being a primary school teacher and you flick open this page and your 8-year-old lad's got henceforth. You'd be like, what on earth is this?
Oh, my word was indubitably.
That's a great word.
I can't compete for that.
It's just so formal. It's so formal, but it completely fits the Emperor down to a T. Obi-Wan, let's talk a little bit more about Ewan McGregor in this film. I think everyone's in agreement. His shining scene in this film is when you were the chosen one scene on Mustafar. That is really where you see just the emotion of him, and just him being one of the best actors in the film. I think we've all agreed that he's probably the best actor out of all 3 prequels, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it really sort of culminates in that one scene. I mean, he's fantastic throughout. His character really doesn't get a lot to do in the film. It seems a lot of times where George Lucas was just shrugged his shoulders and just sent him off to Utapau single-handedly to deal with Grievous, who's a new bad guy that's introduced into this one, who we'll talk about in a bit. So for the most part, I think his character was wasted quite a lot. I think it would have been cool if we'd have seen Anakin and Obi-Wan go on more adventures together. I know we get that scene at the start, but I think it would have been nice to see maybe a little bit more of that. But yeah, that bit at the end, and then leading all into the ending, is some of Ewan McGregor's best performance in this film, or any of the Star Wars prequels, I'd say.
Yeah, and going off Ewan McGregor, it's very controversial, but that scene, to me, obviously the Chosen One, you can actually put that up there with original trilogy scenes in terms of performance of him, and just the actual scene. I remember being a kid that there was like goosebumps of that. I sometimes get it today. I'm seeing it again on Wednesday, but it's going to be great fun seeing it because it is such a brilliant scene. Followed by another fantastic delivery of "I hate you" screamed by Hayden Christensen as he burns and claws and turned into the Gollum creature. Yeah, it kind of killed it, but I just loved it. And then when he picked up the lightsaber, there was just the kid in me clocking on against, "Hey, that's Luke's."
But when you do watch A New Hope again, he says, "Your father wanted to have this when you were old enough." I'm like, yeah, bullshit. He was like burning. He was just a charred corpse in the gravel at that point.
I hate you. But seriously, like when my kid's born, give him the lightsaber. You know, want to keep it in the family. You know.
And he was a good friend. Yeah, yeah, okay, George Lucas. But yeah, one of my biggest sort of memories of seeing this film in the cinema was during that scene where Anakin's burned. I mean, we all knew it was coming. I think even I've got this vague like memory in my brain, and when I was a kid, that was rumoured for a while. Like, I think I asked someone like, "Why is Darth Vader in the suit?" and someone says, "Oh, well, he fell in lava, didn't he?" I don't know if that was sort of a rumour that was knocking around in a book somewhere, like an EU book or like a trading card thing or an action figure, but I think it was always stated that, you know, Anakin got put in the suit with an accident on a volcano, so it was sort of neat to see that happen. But I remember when that happened, and this was pretty much just the one scene that got it that 12 certificate, when he's burning, I remember looking around the cinema to see people's reactions, and all, you know, dads were there with their kids, and all the kids were like either crying or like the dad was sort of like blocking their eyes so they didn't look at the screen, because it is pretty gruesome for like a Star Wars film.
Whoa. You think the 12 rating came from a guy burning instead of a guy killing a bunch of kids?
Well, you don't see that. That's the difference. Like, the whole kid thing's implied.
Brutal. Like, seriously.
I think with implied you can sort of get away with it a little bit more, but when you are seeing someone front and center on camera just burning alive and screaming and all their skins messing up and stuff.
In the next Star Wars film, if they have a character who goes and kills a bunch of kids,
Captain Phasma.
It's PG.
Yeah.
It's PG friendly, yeah.
Yeah, totally. If it's not on camera, if you're seeing like just kids just die just on camera, then yeah, sure.
So you could
give
have,
it a 15,
you could have
give
like
it an 18.
sounds of kids being like tortured off camera, and that'd still be PG, right?
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I actually see Kylo Ren and Captain Phasma literally rounding up civilians, and you know the burning background in the trailer.
Yeah.
I just see like Kylo Ren just beheading them just straight off the spot, and it's never going to happen. But he looks that cool. And Captain Phasma, she looks like, well, it's Gwendolyn Christie, innit?
Yeah.
She could probably snap their necks in real life, let alone in chrome armor, shining.
I'd love to see those two universes cross over.
Shiny chrome. Sprays herself, joins like First Order, dies. Well, I don't know if she dies. No one knows anything. That's just a Mad Max thing that would happen.
That's not the direction I thought he was going to go with that, with the whole Kylo Ren beheading someone. I thought he was going to bring the flame troopers into that, because that would be dark if those just like sort of walked in and just burnt everyone alive. Sort of, you know, it's like poetry, it rhymes, just bringing all the charred corpses back into it.
With that, I would definitely want to see a Mad Max Star Wars crossover.
Have you seen the trailer someone did?
No.
Someone took the Mad Max trailer and they cut it with Star Wars. It's brilliant. It
I haven't
went viral
seen that
a few
one.
months ago. Oh my days! I'll have to send it you guys after. It's
brilliant.
Quality.
So they use the pod race in it or something, or
it's the standard Mad Max going across the desert, and then you know when the classical music kicks in and it's the really quick shots. There's them of like dancing at Jabba's palace, lightsabers, Boba Fett. It's an absolutely brilliant trailer.
and
there's like
we'll put.
There's like
Go
TIE
on.
fighters. Sorry, I was gonna say there's like TIE fighters flying in on the helicopter shots there in the film. Oh, it's fantastic.
We'll have to put that in the description below so people can see that as well, because I'll watch that as soon as we're done here. But yeah, so with that whole like thing with Anakin, then I definitely think that was violent. But with the whole 12A thing, I wasn't put off by that, because I thought that we needed to get to that point. We knew what was going to happen, and we knew that it wasn't going to be pretty. And I don't think you could have shied away from that, especially considering we knew how Anakin got put in the suit. So although kids were sort of in the audience just like traumatized by that one scene, I was just sort of sitting back and loving it, because maybe that was just my warped sense as a child, but I just thought that this is awesome. This is what we wanted. This is exactly the sort of tone we wanted when we had the prequels. At least that's what I thought anyway.
Yeah, it kind of... Sorry, you go for it.
I think that you have a very dark past in there, if that's the kind of tone. It was something that I thought of as soon as I saw like the tickets when I went to go pick them up for the new film. It was going to be a PG. And I looked back for all the other Star Wars and I thought, actually, do you know what? Most of the originals were pretty PG. I mean, the prequels were definitely not PG. I'd say that maybe Phantom Menace was the only one that could be considered to be a kids' film. Everything else, like Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, seemed like teenage films. You had to be a little bit more mature to understand what was going on. And I think it's just... I definitely thought that scene, like, alone, of, like, Anakin killing the kids or Anakin burning alive, both of those, I would doubt whether it was a 15, and I reckon it was a few swear words short of possibly being, like, probably a 15.
Just a heads up that they gave Force Awakens a 12A this week. BBFC officially classed it. I'm just guessing that that's because they wanted to hold off showing it to these companies. So it's got officially a 12 now, which is standard, I thought.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so yes, we can pray heap ahead to people.
And maybe that's that shot in the trailer they see when he gets the lightsaber and he like quickly swipes it down towards the camera. That'd be cool if that's sort of a transition in the film. Although I hope in the new film they do carry over the really shitty Star Wars transitions, like the crossfades and all the stuff you'll find on PowerPoint, because that's just sort of a staple of the Star Wars saga at this point. But with the whole 12A thing, one of my problems with it is that the tone of the movie is still very inconsistent. Like, if it did pick that 12A tone, and it kept that going throughout the entire film, being sort of like a bleak end to the trilogy, that would have been cool. But the problem is you have elements of that, but you also still have the childish, wacky humour, mostly with the droids in this one, in all honesty. I don't know what the hell they did to the voices of the battle droids, mostly in the intro of this film, but they're really cartoony and high-pitched and squeaky, like they're on helium or something. And when I rewatched Phantom Menace again for the review, I thought the voices were awesome. They had a proper robotic sounding voices you would expect for those characters to have. And then you get to episode 3, and I don't know whether it was sort of George Lucas wanted to make it more sort of slapsticky, kid-friendly. I don't know what the intention was, but the voices are way off in that opening scene.
Yeah, I remember that actually. It's a good thing you brought it up because I completely forgot. I remember seeing that when they spoke, I was really confused because, you know, you're so used to what they're doing and it didn't suit them at all. And then the super battle droids start talking as well, and I'm there like, that's even worse because they don't even say Roger, Roger in Attack of the Clones. They just shoot people. Yeah. And then they get battered by another flying R2-D2, this time with oil spray. Yeah, it was very strange. But if going to the opening scenes, if you're going to bring it up quickly, I want to say that opening shot is just incredible, and I was wild back then. And even whenever I watch it again as I've grown older, it's when the drums start banging after the theme and you're getting hyped, and then they just fly over, and it's just chaos, and it's just brilliant because that's really Star Wars. It's actually, you've seen it for the first time in 6 films, because that's the best looking space battle they've ever done. As great as the other ones are, that's really, you know, the proper war. It's almost military like when they're shooting each other when they're passing.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's the opening scene that sticks out in my mind the most. And if I'm thinking about it, I know it's very CGI heavy, I know there's not much tension because you really don't know who's fighting who or why and why they're in this situation, but it's probably the opening shot that's most comparable to A New Hope's. I mean, A New Hope's, nothing will top that scene. It's just iconic to cinema, that opening shot of the Star Destroyer passing over the camera, but in that it throws you immediately straight into the action. You look at the openings of the previous other 2 prequel ones, and what is it? It's a ship with ambassadors on there going to a boring Trade Federation ship. Not exciting. Episode 2 is even less exciting, with just a slow tracking shot of Padme's ship coming into land. This one, as you said, throws you straight into the action. This is what we wanted to see from the Clone Wars, and Anakin and Obi-Wan's ship. And I swear to, when I was a kid, I had Anakin's one, the yellow fighter, and that's one of my favourite ships in all the Star Wars films. The way they're sort of flying together and cooperating and weaving in and out of the ships as they're all exploding, it is fantastic to watch. And it all be in one shot as well. You've got the glare of the sun off the planet. It still looks great to this day, and it's definitely one of my favourite aspects about this film.
I have to say though, that entire scene, it was like, it's very CGI heavy. There isn't any practical effects. I know that like the prequels were just all about the CGI, and it would have been nice to see some kind of practical effects in there.
Oh, absolutely.
Even like when they actually
Models.
get to the actual place where Count Dooku is, I don't think that, like, when I looked at that room, I thought, oh, that's a green screen. The entire room is a green screen. They could have at least done it on a set somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen a behind the scenes image, and it is literally Palpatine on a chair, surrounded by green and the odd colouring thing. That I'm 100% certain I've seen that image before, but it doesn't surprise me. The only reason they have him in the chair is because it's not an Easter egg, but it's kind of like Episode 6, you know, just have him sitting on the chair watching them fights. But it's just, again, they take it too far. And I know Christopher Lee can't do a front flip in 2005, but again, you don't need to CGI so much of everything, and it was a bit of a shame because it kind of didn't really work as him doing a front flip anyway. I don't know what I'm really gathering on about it, but he's this like a badass older wise man. They just have him walk like, you know, how Christopher Lee would walk. It'd be brilliant, but the lightsaber fight was just, yeah, it's average, that first one, going into that as well.
See, I didn't mind that, especially how the conclusion of that I thought was brilliant, where you got Anakin with the two lightsabers at Dooku's neck and Palpatine's going him on. Line one of awesomeness from Palpatine, that do it. I love that line, and just Palpatine all the way through this film.
That was big
And
time
that's-
foreshadowing though, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But when that noise, like when Anakin does decapitate Dooku, and it's that silence where he retracts the lightsabers and sort of looks down, and you can see the conflict in his face. That I remember seeing that in the cinema. I was like, yes, this is what it's all about. That's fantastic. This is what we wanted to see. And the fact as well that we didn't talk about this in episode 2 review all that much, but the part where Anakin confesses to Padme that he killed the Sand People, I think that it would have been a lot better if he hadn't have done that, and then you would have got the realisation in this film that Palpatine is the only person he's talked to about this incident that happened. And I thought that would have been really cool, because it would have showed that sort of trust they had for each other, and that Anakin was willing to confide in Palpatine.
Well, they kind of show, because he does tell him, but the Padme stuff made sense because he was being a stupid little boy and wanted to tell someone. But it was kind of cool because obviously we don't see him tell Palpatine, so it kind of just made you aware that over the 3-year cycle that he had told Palpatine, and that, you know, they were fairly close. But talking of the do it line, there is one before, but it's not really a line as such, but they're having a fight, and then he kind of like nods his head and he's like, yeah, or something like that, just because they're fighting as they're like, it looks very odd. But the ending, the decapitation bit's great. It's just the actual lightsaber felt. Whereas, like, let's just have Obi-Wan unconscious for 1 minute just to foreshadow that, you know, Palpatine doesn't want him anywhere near them, stuff like that. But the way they handled it, I thought was good at the end, and it was, you know, seeing him with the red and the blue, again, more foreshadowing. But it was a nice little moment.
Yeah, definitely, and, you know, with Dooku gone, Palpatine's probably the main villain in this, but we are introduced to yet another major bad guy in this film, and that is in General Grievous. Now, I know he featured heavily in, I think it was called something Labyrinth, wasn't it? It was a series of books describing the origin of Grievous, and they also did that 2D Clone Wars one, which explained a bit more about him, why he was coughing and things like that, and how he got the lightsabers off the Jedi. But you shouldn't have to watch those to know who his character is and what he stands for, because you are thrown straight into this movie, and even at that age I was sort of like, okay, who's Grievous?
Yeah.
Why is he here? Why is he doing these things? And rewatching them again, I know I have a bit more context now, but you shouldn't have to do that. If you're watching episode 1, 2 and 3, it is very confusing when you get to that point. And I've said this in all 3, but if this film had sort of one big bad guy all the way through the 3, maybe if it had Darth Maul take the place of Dooku, and had Maul get decapitated in that scene we just talked about, I think that would have been a lot better. But then again, it was clearly George Lucas thinking we need some kind of antagonist to fill the void, to have Obi-Wan go off and do something. And I do think Grievous is a pretty cool character. I think he's one of the best looking Star Wars characters in the whole 6 films. But there's just like no setup for him really. He's just sort of there. He's the leader of the droids. He's a general in the army, and that's about it. He's just there to serve as another overextended lightsaber fight, which didn't really need to be in there, and that whole chase and subplot on Utapau. So yeah, his character's rendered sort of pointless at the end, although he does look awesome, and I would have liked to have seen a bit more of him.
Yeah, I think with Grievous it's interesting because it's really cool to see a general type figure, because really we've only seen Count Dooku, Boba Fett, not Boba, Jango Fett to a degree, and it was cool having Jango as the sort of backup man to Dooku in episode 2, and I think he kind of clocked on and goes, okay, I have to have something similar. And the creation of Grievous is interesting because it's quite cool to see a droid that's, you know, former warrior, actually knows what he's doing, especially when you go off the Clone Wars cartoon they did beforehand, the 2D one, how like scary and brilliant he is in that.
And he's trained by Dooku as well.
Yeah, so stuff like that would have been cool, but I don't really think it paid off as much as it could have done. Going back to what you're saying about maybe Maul lived on, you could easily see Maul taking on the Grievous role in episode 3. It would have made sense for someone like Maul, because you wouldn't kill him at the start if he's been around for 3 films. You'd want him in that middle section to have the main fight at the end. But I don't like it. I know a lot of people dislike it, and you know it gets a bit stupid when he throws Obi-Wan and starts making like flubber noises. But I thought he was cool when I was younger, and he kind of looks awesome. I'm kind of waiting for a Black Series figure of him. But
yeah, that would be incredible.
I liked what he tried to do, and it was just really nice to see like a general side of it, because it's a bit boring always seeing the main leaders.
What do you think, Tate?
Well, I enjoyed the lightsaber fight that he did. I quite liked the spinning blades that he created in that fight. I thought as a character himself, there was barely any development on it. He was a bad guy. Generic bad guy number 1. Yeah, sure, he was cool looking, but like, it didn't really affect the plot in any way, shape or form, really. I didn't understand when I was younger why he was even in the plot, why they'd only just introduced him and stuff like that. And I just thought they were just trying to overcomplicate things, add a little bit of runtime to it. I quite like the character itself, it's just that I didn't really see the point of him.
Can I just say though, Grievous gets one of my favourite lines in this. It's probably the stupidest line, or one of the stupidest lines of the Star Wars saga, and I always love to quote it. It's where he's talking to Newt Gunray, and he says, "It is a volcanic planet. You will be safe there." I just love that. Like, it's so dumb, and it's great, and I just quote it all the time when I'm talking about Episode 3.
I can't really think of any, other than "You are the chosen one." That's the main quote that kind of stood out for me on this one.
Oh, anything with Palpatine for me. Anything with Palpatine.
Palpatine literally
amazing.
No, you have lost. Oh, it's brilliant. He's brilliant in this film. I love him so much. Literally, if I ever meet Ian I can't pronounce his surname. If I ever meet that man, I'm going to shake his hand and say, "You, sir, are a fucking legend." I don't care if I get taken away by Sakuri. And his corkscrew spin, I'm jumping off way there. They put that in Battlefront, for God's sake. They wouldn't give him a lightsaber because of how OP he'd be, but his corkscrew and spin move is in a Battlefront, and they've kept literally everything away from the prequels as they could. And I'm just there like, get in the corkscrew, just like spinning. He's like, you know, I'm just this guy that's done nothing for 2 films. I look sad, but look, I can whip out the lightsaber from the side of my pocket and kill all of you. And he just makes that kind of scream noise in the process. He is an absolute legend. And it's just everything he does is just pure brilliance in this film. And I want to see, like, I say, give me a Palpatine Netflix series like during the events of Episode 3 or something like that. Just like a 10-hour special, just like watching him just do his thing.
Go for a
kind of,
you know, Breaking Bad kind of spin-off type thing for a Better Call Saul series, but Better Call Palpatine.
It'd be like, you know, House of Cards. I haven't seen it, but can you just picture Palpatine like talking to the camera like Kevin Spacey does in the show?
Actually, yeah, I can.
Literally just be moaning like fucking Jedi. Oh, the potential is there. Make it happen.
I need to see that show. You need to pitch that show to execs and just get it made. I need to see that. And that corkscrew movie you're talking about, that's in the Lego games as well. in the old original
Oh, yeah.
Complete Saga. I think they keep the corkscrew in. It's just brilliant because it comes right the fuck out of nowhere. Like, it's the first time that we see Palpatine with a lightsaber. And then that just happens. It's like that moment you just said with Dooku where he does that front flip. Like, it's a move that you would never put two and two together with that character. And he also does something else in that fight as well. He does like a little sort of like frog leap off a platform in the middle of the room. It's so over the top, but it's amazing. And the only villain I compare Ian McDiarmid's portrayal of Palpatine to this is Voldemort from the Harry Potter series. In terms of sheer level of just chewing the scenery, just having as much fun with it as they can. Oh, it's fantastic. Just every single scene he's in. The major one is definitely the scene where Mace Windu confronts him and they have that fight, and then all the dialogue after that. I was always really confused about why his face went all wrinkly and evil. Like, I think it... Yeah, exactly. I think in the film it's inferred that with like Mace Windu like blocking the lightning back on his face.
Aged him.
But then you go to Return of the Jedi where you know, Luke's getting electrocuted, nothing happens there, and even Anakin gets electrocuted in Attack of the Clones. So I don't know if he was some kind of like ancient evil Sith like monster and he was like unleashed in his proper form. I really don't know.
Maybe. I've just pulled up another line. It's Mace Windu, you know, you're under arrest, and it's like I am the Senate.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant.
Yeah.
Come on, George Lucas, give yourself a pat on the back there. Without a doubt, the greatest lines you've written in this trilogy. I wanted to see more.
Yeah.
In episode 1, you had him smiling for no reason. In episode 2, you had him saying he loves politics. In episode 3, he's clearly been snorting cocaine before takes.
He's right though.
Damn right, he is the rock star of this galaxy in this movie. And it's just great how he keeps changing his voice as well. Like, he'll be normal Palpatine voice, and then he'll just be like, I can feel your anger. And he just changes his whole, like, face, his voice. He's saving grace of this movie, hands down. Just, I can't say enough positive things about it.
No, I have to say that Obi-Wan Kenobi's performance in every film has been the saving grace, whilst, like, the Emperor's performance only came out in the final film.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I always think Ian McDiarmid was great in it, and it's just amazing that he did play the Emperor in Return of the Jedi when he was like, what? He must have been like early 30s, I guess.
Yeah, I'm guessing so. I think there's some dodgy story that apparently he only got hired because he would wear the contact lenses, something weird, but I don't care. He's great.
And the only thing that sort of lets me down in that scene where he becomes Emperor Palpatine as we know him, that fight could have been awesome, and even when I watch it to this day, it still annoys me how easy those other Jedi go down. Kit goddamn Fisto, one of my favourite Jedi masters. We didn't talk about it in Attack of the Clones, that scene where he force pushes the battle droid C-3PO over and he does that little grin. It's like iconic to the character. He just gets taken down straight away, and I think that fight could have been amazing if you'd have had
I love
four
how you
Jedis turn up.
How you're just able to just go, yes, that guy, and just say their name. Like, I have absolutely no idea with any of the characters from the
He's-
I love
Star
Kit
Wars
He's the
Fisto.
green guy.
ones.
No, he lasted. He lasted like 2 defenses, but he knew he was fucked the second he got the lightsaber out. There was the first guy with the horns. I've forgotten his name, who gets stabbed, and he kind of goes.
Yeah, the
And then the guy-
Tin.
And then the guy next to him, he just slashes, who doesn't even bloody try and defend himself. He's probably
Yeah.
just as confused as we are. And then Kit Fisto's like shit, and like he jumps backwards, and then he still dies. And
Which
then
is annoying because you see him in Clone Wars and stuff, and he leads like a whole attack under the water, doesn't he? On Mon Calamari, and he's like a badass, can't be
Yeah,
touched.
but
And then
it's the Emperor.
against Palpatine, also in that fight, the many faces of Palpatine. Oh
And
my
Mace
god, his
Windu.
expressions are gold.
there's a great Samuel L. Jackson one where they're kind of like they're locked in together. And
Yes. Yeah.
He's just I'm doing it now where he just like clenches like his nose and everything, and he just starts staring forward. Samuel L. Jackson. He clearly waited for that. I don't blame him. It's a great fight, and it's a great way how he died. You know, electrocuted and sent off a ledge a few 100 foot, and
Yeah.
he still could live actually.
Yeah,
There's
some-
rumours for
rumours
Rebel
that
Series
he
2,
is.
isn't it?
No, there was a.
Just I didn't hear that, but I could see. Just give Samuel L. Jackson a Star Wars film to himself.
I heard a rumor flying around that he's going to be John Boyega's dad in the next film.
Just like, oh my god, could you imagine just like John Boyega?
Well, you got to think
Just
that John
something happens.
Boyega's obviously he's got a lightsaber in this film, so to some extent he's got to be Force sensitive, even if it's a tiny bit. That means he has to have Force in his family before him. And who is the only other black character in the entirety of the Star Wars universe?
And
Lando Calrissian.
Lando Calrissian.
Just imagine this. John Boyega comes home after a long, tiring day of slaughtering stormtroopers. And he opens his family... You know the standard Oscar drama, I have an ill parent.
Yeah.
And he opens the door and there's just Mace Windu with, like, sitting in a chair. He's aged from his lightning spell and it's the modern day, you know, Samuel L. Jackson. And then John Boyega, like, you know, the Sith's back. And then fucking Samuel L. Jackson just gets up and just does a Samuel L. Jackson quote, I don't know. But like,
Finn, I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
and he's like,
End of movie.
Finn's like, say what again? And there's like the Sith are back. I double date, motherfucker. He just like stabs his own son. And Supreme Leader Snoke is really Supreme Leader Windu, and here we have it. The greatest
Have you ever heard of the
spin-off that
Bible?
won't ever happen.
Yeah.
Oh, just bring back Samuel L. Jackson. He loves it. He was in the Tarzan trailer today, wielding 2 guns. What an absolute hero he is.
I still need to see that trailer, and I'll probably get a reaction out of that. There's been loads of trailers come out. I didn't know he was in that film, actually. Now that makes me really want to see that film.
Nah, mate, it's all about the
I'm
Brothers
trying-
Grimsby.
It looks fucking quality. I love Sacha Baron Cohen. Apparently, when on Jimmy Kimmel, and I'm straying away, but apparently he went and dressed as Borat, took the piss out of Donald Trump and went home.
Yeah.
But that trailer put Sacha Baron Cohen in the fucking cantina scene.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else we could talk about. I could talk
soundtrack.
about, like, yeah, definitely. Some of the most iconic themes in this. Duel of the Fates thankfully gets a reprise at the end fight. The Mustafar theme, I think it's called Battle of Heroes, or it might be just Anakin versus Obi-Wan, I think.
There's 2 tracks like that, and they're both, they're basically the same.
Loved that sound, and what I loved about that is that the theme keeps getting repeated, so it has an iconic theme, and John Williams is brilliant at that, for just coming up with main themes for stuff. The most hummable, the most memorable themes are probably from John Williams, and that is without question of a doubt one of the best. And one of my other favourite tracks in it, and I know this is jumping ahead to the positives, my favourite scene in all 3 of the prequels is the Padme's rumination scene. It's the scene in the film where I believe it's where Anakin's just about to decide to go and help Mace Windu when he's gone to confront Palpatine, and it's that quiet, really eerie scene where Padme's looking out of the window at the Jedi Temple and Anakin's sitting in the Jedi Council room, and it's all very quiet. There's not much dialogue. I think there's a little bit of voiceover from Palpatine, and the music's just so creepy and just hits. That's just without question of a doubt one of my favourite scenes, and that's all down to John Williams' music again as well.
It's a great scene, but I think the one I've always talk about is Order 66.
Yes.
Absolute. Probably the most perfect scene. The best way they could have actually had it, because, you know, the other 2 films weren't brilliant. You had a scene of Qui-Gon Jinn dying, followed immediately by Jar Jar Binks being Jar Jar Binks, so the fact that he pulled off getting all the Jedi killed was really good, I thought. And then it kind of finishes with Yoda dropping his walking stick, and he feels it, he knows we're fucked, and then he decapitates 2 clone troopers. But it's just great, and it's even the little Jedi. I know the EU's given them all more profiles, especially Clone Wars, but it's just when everyone's getting absolutely wrecked, it was just great. And Ki-Adi-Mundi, who's always been a personal highlight, I grew up calling him Eggman until I found out his name, is when he died, and I was like, get in. He deflected a few, but he still got wrecked as well.
Yeah.
I just think Order 66 was just it was just a complete wipe scene, wasn't it? You were just thinking, well, they're screwed. No hope at all. Like, you were kind of predicting and hoping that you'd see at least one of the people survive, but no. And I know that I said previously, like, oh, you can kind of predict who's going to die, who's going to live, and stuff like that. I genuinely thought in this scene, when watching it for the first time, oh, come on, they're not going to kill off all of these characters. They got to at least keep one alive, maybe for like an Easter egg in another film. But nope, all gone. And that really made me sad.
Yeah. The only thing I can't fault the scene, I think it's brilliantly done, but this was a fault of the films, is that we don't really get to know these other Jedi. They're just sort of there in the background. So you remember the guy with the egghead. You remember the squid guy, or the guy with the weird gas mask face. That's all you. They have no. I don't even think most of them speak. I know Coyote Mundi does, but most of the other ones really don't speak. And it's only through, I think it was me, like playing the PlayStation games or reading up on the books where you actually learn these characters' names. And then, as you said, like Clone Wars sort of actually gives them voices and personalities, and that definitely sort of enhances the experience when you go back and then watch this film. It is a fantastic scene, though, and I've just a remembrance to Plo Koon, one of the most heartbreaking deaths. He was always one of my favourites for some reason. I remember, I think it was it Jedi Power Battles on PlayStation 1? I think he was one of the playable characters in it. He had a yellow lightsaber, and when he went down, I was just like, oh, that's a shame. But then you also get Jedi that don't even get to take out the lightsabers, like Ayla Sakura, the blue Jedi. She just sort of like awkwardly turns around and then just gets shot. And even when she's already dead on the ground, they just keep firing. Like they just don't care.
I always laugh at that because she knows she's fucked, so she pretends to die. She starts falling like she's trying to be Wayne Rooney or something, and the clones are having none of it, and they just obliterate her and just going and going. It's brilliant. But I always laugh at her because she hasn't even been shot by the time she's waved her arms and she's going to the floor.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Yeah, but I think Order 66 is a great scene. I guess we're sort of on positives now, so we can sort of carry this on. Is there any other scenes that you guys would like to talk about that you really like about this film?
Go with the final lightsaber battle if you want. I know.
Yeah, the
yeah,
final
we need to
lightsaber
talk
battle.
about that.
I love it.
Yes,
Absolutely love it.
You
For
don't.
me, I think it's too long, like a little bit. I think like when you clock the timing, because it does go on parallel to the Yoda and Palpatine one, so you still subconsciously count it as one. I think it's about 20 minutes long, and I don't think it needed to be that long. I think it gets to a certain stage where there is so much over the top stuff going on that you sort of zone out of why they're fighting and the emotional stance behind their fight, and you just sort of just in it for the eye candy. Like there's just so much special effects going on and spectacle that you're watching that, and I think that at a point detracts from the fight. At least I think it does. It sort of brings it back towards the end with the dialogue, apart from the one where they're on the platform. It's like, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil, which is
you
still
are lost.
yeah.
I can quote
Like-
that.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I can do that. My sister's witnessed it. When I've got the soundtrack on, I can quote that entire thing, and it's absolutely brilliant. But
in time with the music. Yeah.
it's the immolation scene. I think no, it's not. Sorry, that's the Chosen One speech. But yes, I love the fight. But also going into the dynamic of it lasting long. There's these moments when they're equaling each other's moves, and it's the kind of definition of the master versus pupil, which they talk about in Episode 4, because you're seeing everything that Obi-Wan's taught him, and they're both trying everything they do, but they kind of realise that they're equal to each other. And Obi-Wan's taught him so well, Anakin's learned so well, that this dynamic really pays off, and at the end of the day, it comes down to Anakin's stupidity as the learner. Again, that works with the Episode 4 dialogue between him. But I just love the lightsaber battle they have, especially the spinning move when they're spinning it off their wrist. I've always done that when I was younger in battles. I've fought many wars.
There was some
Wait,
there were some parts of this fight where it looks very, very cheesy, CGI and stuff like that. There's one which comes to mind immediately where at the start of the fight, Obi-Wan Kenobi does a flip backwards, and it's just like, oh, that's just horrible. Like they haven't even got him doing like wire stunts or anything. They've just taken a video off the internet and just placed it on top. Like, I swear his clothes change colour in that single flip backwards. It's crazy. But like the rest of the fight I quite enjoyed. I think it was the most dramatic of all the fights. I mean, they had the music going on, there's lava everywhere, there's obstacles, they're talking smack about each other in the middle of the fight. Like, it was brilliant. I'm not sure why anyone would not like it, Chris.
I think it's definitely not my favourite fight. My favourite fights will always be from the original trilogy. My favourite mostly being the one from Return of the Jedi. I think just everything just builds to that scene, and then when the music kicks in when Luke snaps. But I want to talk about that more when we get to the Return of the Jedi one. I rewatched Empire Strikes Back yesterday, and my god, that end lightsaber fight's still phenomenal to watch.
It's a bit slow and doesn't.
you know what?
He has no reflexes in that.
Darth Vader's
No,
just
but-
toying with him though.
Yeah, Exactly.
It's not really a fight. If it was a fight, Luke would have died, I think, within a minute.
But it's just like it's more, the originals are more based on the actual characters and their emotions and relationships and what's going on. The fight's just sort of a formality to get them to that point. Whereas in these ones, it's just sort of, yeah, lightsabers are cool. Let's just watch spectacle happen for 20 minutes, and the character and motivation takes a back seat. And if we are going with sort of just ranking them on prequel fights, I do think that Duel of the Fates is a much stronger fight. Maybe that's because that's the first Star Wars film I saw, and that was sort of like my first experience of seeing lightsabers on screen. But just hearing that Duel of the Fates theme for the first time and having just 3 people fighting, I think that was definitely my favourite. This is a great fight. I just think it gets a little bit too showy and a bit over the top when you have a fantastic fight from Return of the Jedi, which is about, what, 3 or 4 minutes long, like in total, if you just take the lightsaber scenes, and then you have this one, which is 20 minutes. I think it gets to a point where it's a little bit of overkill.
I think they're both different in their terms of what they're trying to accomplish. This one, you have to sell how he's turned into Darth Vader. I don't think a 3-minute lightsaber duel would have given it justice for the damage he would have took, and it would have been harder to see their on-screen relationship. So I think the way it was handled was very good in this, but it's so different to Episode 6. Episode 6 is right for all the emotional reasons.
And especially with the ending to this, I have to say quickly before you go on, with the ending of this fight, it's just the way that the fight ends, where Obi-Wan's like, I've got the higher ground, and at that point Anakin's like, there is no way I am losing this, and there was no way from that position that he was going to win it. He was always going to lose it, so his arrogance meant that he had to go for it, and it completely shows his final turn.
I love that bit though where Obi-Wan's like, I have the high ground, and it cuts to that wide shot and he's like an inch above Anakin. I thought that was brilliant. But then again, Darth Maul had the high ground, and look what happened to him.
Another rookie.
You know? Yeah, I guess so.
It's
yeah,
poetry. It's poetry.
Oh.
No,
yeah.
no, it is though, because listen, right, Obi-Wan's clocked on, Darth Maul didn't clock on, he had the high ground, so I'm going to kill him. Obi-Wan clocks on, he's got the high ground, I'm not going to die like Darth Maul.
I guess so. I know we're coming up to an hour soon, but there's a few more things I want to talk about. So I'd quite like to talk about the reveal of Darth Vader at the end, and then sort of go into the ending a bit more, leading into A New Hope. So we finally get to see Darth Vader in what was probably... honestly, I still get chills watching it. When that mask is lowered onto Anakin, and you hear like the hissing of the steam as it's like welded onto him, and then you hear that first iconic Darth Vader breath.
I have to say though, like,
instant chills when I was in the cinema.
In that scene, you have it mirrored against Padme's like pregnancy and the end of that and stuff like that, her giving birth, and I thought that was very well done. I mean, they could have very easily done it as 2 scenes separately, side by side, but they did it integrated with each other, showing how far the mighty have fallen, and like, once again, it brings us out with one of the best quotes in the Star Wars prequels. No.
There is a great sound effect from the 2 intricate scenes. It's of the things that deliver Padme's children. It's like, ooh, bah.
Yeah.
What are they on about? And they're just there going, ooh, bah. They literally, it just looked like they'd found like a drive-through hospital that was near Mustafar just to get her to give birth straight away. I know the planet's called Polis Massa, but they land and everyone in the centre's just looking up at the windows like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah. Oh, honestly, Polis Massa, the most boring level on Star Wars Battlefront 2 on PlayStation. I hated that map. But yeah, what's disturbing about those droid things that say Uber? I swear to God, the one delivering the baby's got like some kind of ice cream scoop for an arm. It's really. I'm like, I really don't want to know what that's used for.
Well, there's something that I have to say quickly about that scene. Padme is... The explanation for her death is she's lost the will to live. What a cop-out.
That's bullshit. That's so bullshit.
It's just like
they should have had him kill her.
The little droid comes over and says, she's dying for unexplained and unexpected reasons. She's lost the will to live. And you're just thinking, that is the most BS death in the entirety of the Star Wars universe.
I agree with you, George. They should have had it where when he force chokes her on Mustafar, if she didn't wake up after that.
Yeah.
Like if he'd have accidentally have killed her.
Obi-Wan, emergency cesarean. Zoom.
I thought they only smelt bad on the outside.
It's like, Leia, what do you remember from your mom? That ghost bloke stabbing me out of her.
Flashback to that scene just randomly in the middle of Return of the Jedi.
But she must have been on the floor, like, ill for like the lightsaber duel. Like Obi-Wan must have come back. He would have come and goes, and she's just there lying down on the floor dramatically. C-3PO just doing there nothing.
Yeah, I was going to say
she
though,
wasn't even
that's
being
the
choked
biggest
for that
mystery
long,
they had.
Just gonna say.
Yeah, and then she was lowered gently onto the floor by Anakin. But the biggest mystery of this entire film and saga is how the hell did R2-D2 and C-3PO get Padme back on board? C-3PO's arms don't even bend. How did he pick her up?
I reckon.
Did R2-D2 just have the tow cable and drag her back onto the ship?
There is a comedy short genius idea here, where we have a 5-minute short and they just walk over and like, well, we got to get her back on the ship, and then they have an entire like dialogue section where they're like trying to think of ways in which they get her back on, and then in the end it's just like R2's just pushing her up the ramp while she's falling up.
Just like Obi-Wan walks past, you have a Ewan McGregor cameo, and he just like throws her on with the Force just after the fight. He's sweaty, he's really pissed off, and he just wants to go home and be able to deal with her.
He just gets on, he's like, okay, straight home, gonna watch a bit of Netflix, gonna fall asleep, and he's just like, oh, what are you still doing here?
Make it happen.
Oh, but so unfortunately, like if that had been like the last scene of Vader we saw with the mask going on, the breathing, I think that would have been an awesome end shot of Vader. Maybe you could have had the one where he's on the walkway in the ship looking out at the Death Star being constructed, because I actually thought that was a pretty cool shot as well.
It was cool to see a younger Tarkin.
Yeah,
I remember that as younger. I didn't expect it. Oh, this is really cool, and they've got a wince of the theme that you hear in Episode 5 and 6. But I really like the ending with Binary Sunset, though.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And I remember because this was quite an emotional ending to the film. Like I know the film wasn't great overall. It wasn't sort of at the same level as the original trilogy, but man, that last shot and that theme comes on, and the iconic imagery of the original. And I mean, at that point, we didn't know we were going to get an Episode 7. We thought this was it. Like we thought 6 was the end, and this was sort of 1, 2, and 3. Boom, there's your 6-film saga. We didn't know we were going to get another one. So, and it's been 10 years. We thought this was the last one. So that shot was very emotional, thinking this is the last Star Wars film I'm going to see in the cinema. I mean, how the times have changed now. We're going to have 7, 8, 9 spin-offs. There's probably going to be a Star Wars film every single year for the rest of my life until it's ran into the ground. But at that time, that scene was beautiful, and just like the whole tying up shots as well, with Bail Organa going off to Alderaan, and you get the reprise of Leia's theme. Just all that stuff, like all the iconic imagery of the originals, I think that was really done well. And when you see that scene, you think like, what could have been if we'd have had maybe a little more connective tissue to the originals and not so much crazy stuff. Maybe we could have had some great movies, because I do think the last like 10 minutes of that movie is fantastic. I maybe could have done without the whole Qui-Gon Jinn name drop. That seemed very just like crowbarred in there.
It was cool because he was actually, booked in for a cameo, but because he'd had a motorbike crash at the time, they didn't follow up on it. But even I think it worked. They didn't bring it because I just remember when they name drop, I was like, "Oh, Qui-Gon," and then Ewan McGregor has the same reaction.
Yeah, and I think I think it's on the deleted scenes, isn't it? It was going to be the scene before Organa sort of comes into the room with Yoda when he's sitting meditating. There was going to be a voiceover of Liam Neeson, and I think that would have sort of maybe lended that scene a bit more gravity and point. But when they just sort of randomly name drop Qui-Gon and that can come back as a Force ghost now. I mean, we never see him as a Force ghost. Maybe if we do in I don't know, in Rebels or something like that, or we see him come back, that'll be a bit better. But I just thought that was a bit random in that end scene. Otherwise, I thought it was fantastic. And the scene where C-3PO gets his mind wiped. Although I was rewatching A New Hope the other day, and with C-3PO going back to Owen, I was like, really, Owen, you don't recognise this robot you had, on Tatooine for ages? Same voice, same make and model. He wasn't gold, but he knew his name was C-3PO, didn't he? I know it's been like 20 years or something, but it seems like something you would remember.
Maybe. It depends how long he had him for, though. I mean, it was 20 years. He might have had 100 different protocol droids. Maybe he built some more of his own, because apparently anyone can build a droid.
I have to say, though,
that's true.
the ending to this film at that point was a complete cop-out. They had to tie up a lot of loose ends. They had an entire 3 films to tie up like the loose ends of the Star Wars franchise, and they decided to get it all done in the last 5 minutes. And I thought that was really cheap.
Yeah, I thought that again was a problem. What we've said before is that the first film was pointless. Really, it started too early. I think if they'd have sort of rearranged the structure of it, I think you could have had a lot more of that original trilogy stuff in the last film, like all throughout it, I think. But yeah, we are sort of at an hour's point now, so I think we've said a lot we can. I know there's a lot more we could talk about and what we've left out, but we want to sort of don't want to go on and on about these. So do you want to just quick round up what you think of Revenge of the Sith, how you think it ranks against the others, and just sort of recommendation really?
Watch it. It's a Star Wars film. You'll like it. To be fair, a lot of the prequel haters still like it, and it does its job. It is. If you want to see how Darth Vader turns Darth Vader, then I would watch this film.
Out of context, would this film still be quite good without the previous 2 films in front of it? Would people know where they were? If they'd seen the other Star Wars films and then immediately skipped to this one, without seeing Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace, would they know what they were watching?
Probably.
I think so. Yeah.
You think so?
I think there's the crawl which says Star Wars, but then after that, it feels like Star Wars having the battle in space at the start.
Yeah.
Moving into a few subplots. I think this could be more than 1 and 2.
Because I feel like you couldn't start like rewatching the films again with like Attack of the Clones. You could probably get away with. Yeah, I just reckon you could probably get away with just watching Revenge of the Sith, and then watching 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, no, I
you can.
agree with that as well. I think it's self-contained enough to do that. I think any sort of carry-ons from the other ones would just be sort of Dooku maybe, and you really don't need to know the history of the clones really either. You could just be thrown straight into that with the war. My recommendation, it's definitely the strongest one of the prequels, but again it does have a lot of the faults that stem from George Lucas and his Yes Men crew of his producer and everything like that. There are still a lot of writing problems in this film, but I do think that unlike the other prequels, I think this one has a lot more memorable scenes to it, memorable shots. I think some of the scenes are great and could stand up against the original trilogy, stuff we talked about like Order 66, the opening and the very end of the film. And if you are going to watch the Star Wars films, you may as well watch them all. As I said, this one's got the most going on in it. It would have been nice to have seen it spread out throughout the film, maybe cut out some of the filler, some of the subplots with Grievous and expand on a lot of the stuff more, but I think it's still a decent watch, although you are still going to have to watch some of that love story stuff and really cringeworthy dialogue and acting. But you do get Palpatine, which is all good at the end of it all. So, yeah, that was our review on Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Be sure to comment and let us know what you thought of this film or the prequels in general or anything to do with Star Wars as we continue on through our Star Wars month. Now it's sort of the home stretch with the original trilogy. Really looking forward to talking about that stuff. I think we can all agree we're in for much more stronger films with these 3.
It won't be as fun, but it will be good.
I'm sure we could still find things to have a joke, a laugh about, but yeah, the prequels definitely you could have a lot more of a laugh with. So yeah, be sure to rate, like, comment, subscribe. You can find us at Facebook at facebook.com/cinemasavvy. We're on Twitter at cinema_savvy, and we're also at Letterboxd at cinema_savvy as well. So get involved, get commenting, let us know what you think of Star Wars, and are you excited for the new movie? A week away, not too long from now, so we'll be sure to get you the reviews on the original trilogy very soon. We'll probably have a top 10 of our favourite Star Wars scenes as well, so just watch out for that as the week goes on. And yeah, until next time, thanks for listening.